You know, it's books like these that are thought-provoking, that make you think of stuff that you don't think of on a daily basis. And I have a question for you. Now, it depends on where you live in the world, but let's say if you could switch places, if somebody doesn't like you just for your appearance, doesn't know you, has never met you in the world, never talked to you in the world, but just hates you because of your race or your sex or just your religion, anything, but they know absolutely zero about you. If they could switch places with you or with anybody else like you and live in those shoes for 24 hours, do you think it would change or make it worse how they feel? If you took the Ku Klux Klan members and switched them with African Americans and they spent 24 hours in each other's shoes, do you think it would make it worse or better? And you have to think about this too. Trying not to get too heavy here. But a person is not born a racist or a bigot or a sexist or anything like that. It's the environment, their community, their parents, their social status, their community that influences their thinking. Especially parents. If you took a black and a white kid and raised them in a really neutral community, they probably grow up to be really best friends or siblings. But if you raise them in a racist neighborhood, they'll probably grow up to be enemies. It's just the environment that they were in. So I guess I got a little too heavy here. So anyways, welcome to the G. Louise book series. I'm Christina, K-S-T-N-A. This is where we read books and talk about books, and it's nice to meet you. I hope you're having a good day. Actually, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. This video will air in the afternoon, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning because I just finished this book, and it was a really good book, and I just wanted to talk about it. And there she goes. No matter regardless time of video, time of day, I do these things, she goes off. But anyways, we are talking about, and I'm going to read, this is going to be spoilers, by the way. Spoilers. I've had some complaints. I've done 800 videos. There are spoilers in all of them. I'm just saying. And, I wouldn't want to be in this chick's I don't know what it was like, and I don't want to find out what it was like, because it was probably really scary and really horrible to have this mental stuff going on in your head 24/7, to live in fear of discovery 24/7. Well, we are talking about the personal librarian, and loving books as I do, and loving libraries as I do. And I just did a quote the other day. It'll show up in a couple days in one of the vids about how the best friend you can have is a library because it's full of books and it'll take you on all kinds of adventures. You can go anywhere in the world in a library. You can be friends with anybody in the world in a library. You can listen to books, read magazines, read newspapers, research. You can do anything in a library. Except other stuff, but you can read about anything in a library and dream about anything in a library. And this is the personal librarian. And to have access, and I've had access. I have I'm a genealogist, and if you saw my podcast a while back, I was talking about how I got published. I compiled and transcribed. I went into courthouses and got out the oldest records from the 1800s, from the 1700s, and sat there and transcribed them all, took photographs of the books, came home and typed them all up and published them. Books that have never been microfilmed. They have pillows. They bring them out to you. They bring the books out on pillows. not everything is there's still books out there that have never been microfilmed, that have never seen the light of day, that live in city vaults, library vaults, but people never ever see, and they just sit there on the shelves unseen for decades. And I have had that experience of being able to look at books that are over 200 or 300, 400 years old. And I have personally transcribed books from the 1700s, and it's been awesome. Wrong state for my genealogy, but it was awesome to be able to touch and feel and read stuff in the original form, in the original document. So I know some of the stuff she's talking about, rare books and stuff like that. I'm leaning more towards genealogy, but if you want a first edition Don Quixote, well, then she's your girl. But so Bella, as gets a job working for J.P. Morgan, and we've got a few family issues here to begin with. She's getting this opportunity because of her mother, and because of her mother position in wanting to improve her children's lives in a semi fake way, very small fake way, although it becomes a big issue later. But what you call it? But the father, on the other hand, was an activist, and he was working to get equal rights for African Americans in all sorts of ways. And he felt that his wife went against all that by pretending to be white because they were light enough to pass for Portugal or Spanish or something. And they broke up. They never, I don't know if they actually physically really got a divorce. But they separated forever. And he was an activist and trying to get equal rights and doing all these lectures and all this kind of stuff. And here she was pretending to be white, and that just separated the family forever. But so she gets this job working for J.P. Morgan at the library, and I already talked about this. So the fight starts when the mother lies to the census taker. No, Genevieve, this was all wait a minute, no. No, Genevieve, this was all about you. This is the life you've always wanted. How can you say that to me? Her voice quivered with defeat. This is not what I wanted. This is what I had to do. I am a fleet. I am proud of my heritage. My father's laughter was bitter. Your heritage? Ah, yes, you are a daughter of the great fleets. Why, I am just the lowly grandson of a slave. You married a greener, a man far below your station in life. Richard, please don't say that. I know how much I love you. Do you? Yes, I do. And I know you love me. That's why I want you to understand. You're accusing me of walking away from who I am, and that's what not I'm doing. Yes, you are. I heard the rustling of papers, and then my father shouted, the evidence is right here. You reported our race to the census workers as white. My father was furious, but I didn't understand his anger. What difference did it make how Mama reported us to the census since our skin was as fair as everyone who lived in our neighborhood, and we were quite a bit fairer than the newly arrived immigrants I'd seen in Lower Manhattan, those of Italian Mediterranean descent, who were presumed to be white, although a low sort of white. I was sure that Papa didn't want us to live in that neighborhood where the colored folks were crammed together. The 5 Points, Greenwich Village, the Tenderloin, or Harlem. The conditions in some of those crime-infested tenements were notoriously unsanitary. Disease broke out with regularity, and some places didn't even have toilets or running water. How can you not understand this has enormous ramifications, Genevieve? You have made official our status as whites, after all the work I've done to advocate for equal rights of blacks and colored people, and how hard I've argued in courts and in newspapers and journals and on the stages that all citizens should be treated the same, whether they are black, white, or colored. That we should not be defined by how many drops of African blood in our veins, but by our character, by our deeds. that we should not be ashamed of our heritage. We are all black and colored alike. Should unify in our fight against prejudice. Your act against goes against everything I stand for and everything I've worked for. The Richard Greener was first colored graduate of Harvard, former professor at the University of South Carolina, and former dean of Howard University School of Law, who gave speeches all around the country, being now, it seemed, rendered speechless. And the whole point of the mother doing this was to help the family, to improve their getting better jobs and getting a better life. And that just shows how backward or slow this country is. The slaves were freed for the Civil War, but then it took another 100 years, over 100 years, to get equal rights in the world. And even after that 100 years, and even though we've had an African American president, which was awesome, there are still places in this country, and we saw so much of that in recent years. And I'm not going to go into all that because it would be heavy, too much for this podcast. But we've still seen that this stuff still exists today, and it would probably still exist 100 years from now. It's just, yeah, that we have to. People have to. People have been raising their children to. Parents have been raising their children for their children to believe what they believe for generations. And as long as people still believe in this stuff, as long as their views stay this way, they're still going to be teaching generation to generation to generation to generation. We even had a local incident here the past week that I think it was a football team. They had their season was canceled because they discovered racism and bullying on their football team. So the school district canceled the rest of their games. So she gets the job for J.P. Morgan, working as the librarian for $75 a month or $900 a year. And I guess for 1900 that was quite a bit. I was thinking he could have made it an even thousand, but so she gets the job working for him, and she later learns that her father was over in Russia doing some stuff and got married over there to a Japanese woman who he never sees again once he comes back. She gets invited to. She spends by this point in the book, she's been working for J.P. Morgan for a while, and she gets invited to the Vanderbilt party. Now, even someone of my class, there would be no way in God's green earth they'd have to accept me in my $10 JCPenney dress. I couldn't even fit into this. I don't know how she did, but she did it very boldly. But suddenly I feel as if there are eyes on me, and I turn around. I smile, expecting to see Mr. Morgan. Instead, I lock eyes with a serving woman. It is more than her simple white collared black dress with a full white apron that separates her from the crowd. It is her deep brown complexion that makes her stand out, yet simultaneously rendering her unseen to the guests. Although my instincts tell me to run away, I'm drawn to her, and our eyes stay fixed on each other. Even as I hear Mama's warning, if you see any colored people, stand tall, don't make eye contact. If eye contact is made, only acknowledge with a nod and then turn away. My glance lingers too long, and my familiar connection we've made, I see that she knows. For the second time this evening, my heart beats wildly, and I try to read what I see in the woman's eyes. Does my deception anger her? Will she reveal my identity to the host, to my boss? Will I lose everything I've worked toward in this single instant because I didn't heed Mama's warnings? Can I plead with her not to reveal my secret, make her understand that this fall wouldn't just be about me, but I would affect everyone I love. Those questions roll through my mind as she approaches. Then, before I decide what to do, the serving woman grins, a broad, delighted, proud grin. Relief courses through me. This woman, defined by her skin, the shade of a new penny, by the deliberating laws of segregation, dividing our country and our people into two halves, seems proud that one of her own has wiggled free from the restraints still inflicted upon some, like chains that bound our ancestors. She nods at me. It takes a moment for me to catch my breath and nod back. She tops off my flute of champagne before she breaks our gaze and moves on to other guests. But my eyes remain with her, and I have a new understanding. With the gift of the position I now hold, I am responsible to many more than just Mama and my siblings. The world I inhabit may not know that I am colored, but there will be some like this woman who will discover my secret, and I wish in some ways my achievements will give them hope. And then, Miss Green, I see you're conversing with several of my enemies. His glance drifts from one man to another before he settles on Mr. Smythe. And this one in particular, Mr. Morgan's voice booms, but his tone is surprisingly pleasant. Mr. Smythe sputters at the label. Mr. Morgan, I've always thought of you as a trusted friend and an occasional client. Pulling himself to his full towering 6 feet 2 inches, Mr. Morgan arches one of his magnificent eyebrows and half jokingly asks, Do you try to swindle all of your trusted friends? I see that the game he is playing. Mr. Morgan knows he must maintain relations with all the key dealers to have full access to the artwork and manuscripts that come to market. But the slippier ones need to understand that he won't tolerate exploitation. If we are to meet our goal of creating America's foremost manuscript collection equal to Europe's finest, then we have to scoop up entire collections, and we cannot do that by alienating any key dealer. So she's having a good time, but she's always living on the edge, always living, waiting for the shoe to drop. And Morgan sends her to Boston to buy stuff. She attends auctions. She goes to the opera, and she has a moment in the opera where she's went with her brother because she has to have a chaperone. And it says, but Miss D. Wolfe continues speaking, holding my brother hostage with her conversation. Russell will never step away while she holds court. Lessons in etiquette prevent such transgressions from politeness. Yes, you are siblings, the same skin tone, and your features interesting. From her concentrated expression, I see that the real inquiry is coming. Where are your people from again? I stiffen. It's the same question Anne asked me during our last encounter. It seems Miss D. Wolfe is on a fishing expedition for Mr. Morgan's daughter. My well-trained brother automatically says our grandmother is from Portugal. Yes, she says, her eyes holding as much doubt as her tone. Portugal. That's what I've been told, but I would have thought you had tropical roots. There's no doubt now Annie and Miss D. Wolfe have spoken about me, but to what end are these questions? I would have thought your people were from some place like Cuba, maybe. Miss D. Wolfe continues, I know that she's intimidating by offering Cuba for our origins. I press my hand against my chest to calm myself and pretend it's a gesture of amusement. Cuba, I chuckle as if I'm delighted by her words, though I seethe inside. Oh no, but I would certainly love to visit that country one day. So she has all these incidents of almost being revealed and living in this issue. And then there's a financial crisis. She helps Morgan through the situation with the financial crisis. Then she has to attend a funeral of one of her relatives. And the fear is that if they go hang out with relatives that are darker than they are, that they'll be discovered. And that's just very scary, that you love your relatives and you want to see your relatives, But if they happen to be a little darker, I mean, I used to have when I was a kid, um, the lady next door to me was Italian and well, she had Italian and Native American, so she was extra dark. And we used to have a contest during the summer who could get tanner. And I always wanted to be tanner like her. But anyways, before we learned about skin cancer and all that other stuff that happened, um, but what was that suntan lotion that smelled like pina coladas or coconuts? I used to like that. Um, but I wanted to um uh why do we have to walk here, Mama? Teddy protests as we all pick our way through the narrow passage littered with broken bottles, half open bags of trash, and discarded shoe. It's just filthy. Keep your voice down, Mama hisses. I told you why before we even got on the train in New York. If we were to pretend to be white here and then be called out as colored, the ramifications could be fierce. What if I could run into someone I know in the train station and our situation was revealed? We would get arrested or worse. While we are here, we will be who we are. We will be colored. Teddy's cheeks flame. She knows about our heritage, but she neither remembers living this way nor really understands the consequences we could suffer if we were discovered to be living as white. She doesn't read the newspapers that I do every day at the Pierpont Morgan Library. She hasn't heard of the hundreds of lynchings that happen every year, including one of a college student who been caught passing. We emerge from the dark passageway onto the side street near the station, blinded like moles by the bright afternoon light. A line of ramshackle carriages for hire is assembled, and we join the queue of colored folks. Russell signals the driver when we reach the front, and we load into the open carriage, jostling through the streets of Washington, D.C. And then we get to the relative's house, and the relatives are mad at us for doing this. They're mad, they're upset. Yes, Guinevere, Aunt Minerva finally speaks her first words to her sister. Sit, if that brown sofa over there isn't dark enough for you. We all freeze, and Uncle Mozart snaps. Minerva, it is only at this moment that I realize what is going on. I have never considered that Mama's family thought about our decision to live as whites once Papa left. It has never occurred to me that it would anger anyone in our family. Why should it? Didn't they understand the advantages Mama's was trying to give us? Well, what do you expect me to do, Mozart? Aunt Minerva asked. We just going to sit here and ignore the fact that our own sister has turned her back on us? That is not what I've done. Aunt Minerva raises her eyebrows in mock surprise. It's not? No, Mama cries. I'm still a fleet. You don't act like one, Minerva huffs. You won't even let Mozart come to see you when he's in New York because now you're the Greens. She says her name with disdain, but it's not what most shocking. Is that why Uncle Mozart stopped visiting? I thought it was because he always came to see Papa, but he'd stopped because of Mama. But she didn't want him to be seen with us. I think of the times I would prefer to be with Louise or Ethel rather than Russell, but the fairer shade of their skin validates mine. Is that how Mama feels about her brother too? And I think we're gonna leave it at that. Um, I have done what I know is best for my children. To be colored in America is a burden that I don't want them to have to shoulder. Mama has spoken as eloquent as I ever heard her. Can't her siblings understand that she's right? This part of DC has remained unscathed so far, but the vice of segregation has been tightening and oppression has been escalating. Every week I read another newspaper article about mobs of white terrorizing colored neighborhoods, dragging black men from their homes on the word of white women who have made accusations. The Atlanta massacre happened 2 years ago, but the city is still reeling and recovering from 2 days of race riots that started with 4 allegations of rape by white women and ended with more than 25 colored men dead. No one is exempt from the degradation that accompanies the deep-seated racism. Even President Roosevelt faced the contempt of the Southern Democrats when he tried to welcome Booker T. Washington into the White House. It's learned. You learn it in your environment. You learn it from your parents. It's just learned, and it's horrible that this continues. Even in today's world, even in the modern advanced today's world, this stuff still goes on, and it will go on for a very long time. I don't know if we'll ever be free of it. So let's see. Why was I back up here? But there's at one point she's caught in a she desperately fears that JP Morgan has found out and that her life is over. And it was just some flippant thing she said at a opening at an event, and a reporter quoted her, or someone told the reporter that she said this. So JP shoves the article in her face. Is JP Morgan becoming a modernist or worse, a photo secessionist? A little birdie told this reporter at an exclusive event at 291 last night that the ultra-traditional titan of industry is considering branching out from collecting the medieval and Renaissance treasures for which he's famous. Bells chimed and cash registers chinged throughout the city at the heady notion of a Henry Matisse finding its way into the Pierpont Morgan Library walls. And I didn't understand what this was about. I didn't get it, but it's explained that he doesn't do this type of stuff, but I didn't get it. So then she meets this guy Morgan Berenson, and he's a married man, and they have an open marriage. And this is one of the things that I do not like about her and her choices. She decides to get romantic with him, and she's naive and she doesn't know the ways of the world and probably never had that particular talk with her mother. I don't know if her mother explained it or they don't address the issue in here at all, but she's one of those gullible girls that believes she's in love, and she believes the man of her dreams is telling her the truth, even though she knows he's married and she knows how he feels about things. But it never occurred to her to think about contraception or what the consequences of following your passion and your love and all that kind of stuff. And she ends up with child, and they don't really reveal all the thinking, but the fact that he rejected her and her child, that she ends up getting rid of the child, I don't think that was right, especially during this particular time period when medical advances haven't really advanced, and they probably did more damage to her than today's version would do it. But that was her choice to make, and she figured her life would be over, her career would be over, and that she would lose her job and should be a single mom and all that kind of situation. But she should have thought of all these things before she got involved with a married man, and she was too naive to even think about these things. But she has a relationship with him, and it develops, and she does all this traveling, and she has a really, really, really good life. And then she goes to see her father, and she's afraid of being seen with him for the questions, but Chicago should be okay. It's far enough away from New York. And she has a conversation with him, and he brings up the fact that he has done all of this lecturing and activisms for equal rights and all this kind of stuff. And here she is pretending to be white and living the life that he wants everybody to have the opportunity to live. And he's right that everybody should be able to have the exact same rights as everybody else. And sometimes they're trying in this country and sometimes they're not trying. Sometimes you see so much in the paper. There are certain people that all they do is spend their time in Congress trying to get other people and say stuff about other people. And we're spending money on all the countries around the world. But what about the homeless here? What about taking care of them here? What about taking care of our veterans here? What about free health care for the elderly? What about free health care for everybody? What about improving conditions here in this country? We're spending so much money around the world. We need to spend that money here. You need to care about the people here. We need to get industry back here. We need to solve racism here. But it's going to be a couple hundred years. I can see it now. But it's a really thought-provoking book. It really is. And I love the author's notes at the end of the book. And as with the Victoria Thompson books, I love them. I love her little history. So in the last chapter, she's burning all of her stuff. She's burning all her records of herself. I don't know why. She's kept copies of all of her life. The charred corner of a letter drifts from the flames into the hearth. Even though I know the singe's edges will be hot, I grab it for an effort to rescue it from the flames. But before my fingertips reach it, I stop myself. Why would I stop this endeavor to destroy all my records? Isn't it as if saving the letters will restore the people memorialized in them? I can allow nothing to blacken my legacy. Can pulling Mama's messages from the flames return her to my side where she lived her entire life until she died almost 10 years ago, leaving me truly alone for the first time in my life? While we had our own challenges in my early years, I released animosity when I returned from Chicago in 1913, and my mother and I forged a closer relationship. While Papa held dreams of equality for us all, Mama saved me, all my siblings, from segregation and racism in America, freeing me to fulfill that early promise Papa saw in me. And she was real, and she was a real person, and she lived. Marie Benedict says, "This is not my ordinary author's note, but The Personal Librarian is not my usual novel. I had no idea that writing a book about Bella DeCosta Green, a personal librarian to J.P. Morgan, creator of the Pierpont Morgan's Library, famous manuscript collection, and a woman with life-altering secret would change me. That in bringing Bella to life, I would awaken and gain a sister in the process. I first discovered Bella years ago when I was a different person living a different life. I was a commercial litigator in New York City working for one of the largest law firms, and I was terribly unhappy. I knew I wasn't engaged in my life purposes, and the Pierpont Mortgage Library became one of my refuges during those dark days." And she unearthed all the information about Bella. So you should give this book a chance. It's really good. It was a very quick read. I read it in a few hours, and it was really enjoyable, and I hope you like it, and I hope you hit the like and subscribe. I hope my lecturing didn't piss you off too much, but thank you for joining me. Thank you.